Back in November, I noticed I only had 5 pages left to finish coloring my entire book, Loved. And I thought that was the perfect opportunity for me to try some viral coloring techniques that had caught my eye and that I just hadn't tried because they seemed a little bit too time consuming or maybe intimidating. So today I'm going to show you how I did those. And I did want to say, though, that I did start this video back in November. So that's why the first page I'm going to share with you is Christmas themed. I hadn't shared until now because some of you may know that I got super sick right before Christmas and only felt better way after the New Year's. So yeah, here we are. I am going to edit this video though in a way that that first page that I colored, which was Christmas theme, is going to go at the end of the video so you can watch it only if you choose to. With that, let me show you how I colored these pages and let's get creative. So here's my beautiful, almost fully colored book. And a gentle reminder, you can find my coloring books on Amazon or you can download digital copies from my website. Now, I started filming this on this page, but like I said, because this was back in November, I started by drawing a Santa's hat on the little mouse to make the page Christmas themed. Well, it's January 2026 now, so I'm skipping this page right now and I'll save it for the end of the video. And I'm gonna move to show you the second technique I tried, which was the embroidery effect. I did try this one before on this page on this book, but I only made the hearts into small embroidered patches, and this time I want to make the whole drawing into a large patch and see if I can improve on the effect. I started by drawing some guidelines with pencil. I wanted to determine the direction of the threads for the patch. I got and saw a lot of reference pictures for this to try to better understand how these patches are made. I looked closely at all of these images I gathered on the internet, and that's why I draw the lines for the bunny and the paint in a different direction. Once I had all of the guidelines done, it was time to pick colors. For each color I planned to use, I had to choose a light, medium, and dark shade of that color. I was testing and writing down my colors on a scrap piece of paper to keep track of my choices. In general, I always like to color with some extra paper on the side to try things out. I started by coloring the ground entirely with the lightest shade of purple. And then I needed that to dry a little bit to start creating the details on top, so I went ahead and colored the entire background too. For this, I chose pink. And I guess the good thing about this effect is that if it's tricky, it works better for the threaded effect. So yeah, you can relax while coloring here. While I colored the background, the ground had dried enough to continue, so I grabbed the middle shade of purple and I started to draw little lines perpendicular to the ones I had drawn with pencil. These lines are irregular and only need to come about to half the space of each row. It's almost like drawing grass. Most lines are of the same height and some are a little bit taller. The point is that none of the lines touches the other side. Once those lines are drawn, it's time to do the same with the darker shade of purple. Only this time the lines are a bit further apart to appear thinner and to show the other color through. After that, I used a colored pencil to draw very thin stitches on top of the pencil lines. These are just broken little vertical lines, but it's an extra step that supports the illusion that this is all thread. I went through all of the rows and then I used a white gel pen to create highlights. The lines you're supposed to draw with the white don't touch either side of the pencil lines. They stay mostly in the middle to really highlight the curved thread. Once I drew the white lines, I added a few darker lines with the purple colored pencil because the pencil draws thinner strokes that really help create the illusion of embroidery. Once I finished, I grabbed my mid-tone purple and I added a few strokes here and there coming in from the top side of the lines. I was trying to polish the illusion of thread a little bit. Just having it be flat on one side wasn't working for me. So that first part was done and it looked okay, so I moved to the background. Same process, we're going to go over it again, using the mid-tone pink to draw lines filling the middle of each row. But this time, because I learned from doing the ground, I also drew tiny strokes on the top side of each line so that they would act like shadows, giving the curved illusion of the stacked threads. I let that dry a little bit by coloring other areas like the bunny and the paint, and then I went back to color this pink background using the darkest shade of pink. Again, these darker lines are a bit more spaced out. And then, just like I did with the ground, I drew stitching with a colored pencil and some more thinner lines on top to look like thread. The white gel pen goes on top, as you know, because the white highlights are key for the illusion to work. As I colored and I became confident with the technique, I noticed I could draw the highlights as a zigzag, and that was faster. A bit of a curved zigzag. So let me show you how I'm doing that better on a separate piece of paper with red. This is the motion or the stroke I'm drawing with the white gel pen on top. It's a continuous line and it works perfectly. And it's also faster to do it this way. With the background colors done, it was time to simply repeat the same process on everything else in the illustration. I started with the bunny, which I had already based, and for some reason the color I was using for my midtone was super juicy and I didn't get any sharp lines. So I had to let it dry for a while as I work on the paint tube to go over it again and make those lines clearer. After finishing the paint, I went back to the bunny with my darkest shade to create more lines, and I polished everything with a colored pencil, creating stitchings and lines to look like thinner threads. I added highlights and moved to the paint tube. Same process. And then I skipped around all the other areas using the same method of little lines in 3 different shades and adding highlights. But I did use a silver coloring pencil on this area of the paint tube to make it look a little bit more like metal. With everything finally colored, it was time to add the last details to make this look more like a whole patch. So using a fine liner, I went over every single black outline with a tiny zigzag, making it look like the stitching that keeps the patch together. Here I also used that silver color pencil to create some highlights along with the white gel pen. I did all of the inner outlines first, and then on the outer circle I did the little zigzag thing again, but I also added some random strokes and curves to make it look like little pieces of thread that were coming undone. The outline was ready, so the last step was adding a bit of a shadow with a light gray marker, and that was it. I was very happy with the result. Let's remember how the page looked before and compare it to how it looks now. Now I truly think it does look like an embroidery patch. It was a fun thing to do, and yeah, I like it. Moving on to the next page, I wanted to try the sticker effect. I'm not sure this was the best page to use this for, but I thought I would try to make it work. After all, I only had 5 pages to go and a few ideas I wanted to try. So I chose which elements of the drawing were going to be stickers, and I drew an outline around them with my pencil. My idea for this was to be like one of those sticker scenes where you stack them onto each other to create the scene that you want. I love those. So once I determined how I wanted my stickers to layer, I used a white acrylic marker to go around those outlines to cover any black lines that fell in between that space. Of course, it's hard to cover black lines with white, so I knew this was going to take a lot of layers, and that was okay. In fact, while that first layer dries, let me show you the sticker scene things I was talking about. I have a few left that I can't wait to use. I've already made some off camera and maybe I'll make a short out of them. It's very satisfying to put them together. Well, the white had dried a little, so I started to add a second layer. You really need those lines to be covered for the drawings to seem as independent parts. Then I traced the pencil with a black marker, and this is a step I'm going to later regret, and you'll see how I fix it later. I left my book a while to let it dry properly, and then I opened it again and I forgot I left the page clipped and I ripped it a little bit. Ugh. Luckily, it was a clean tear, so I was able to fix it by putting some clear Scotch tape on the back. Things like this happen, but luckily I hadn't started coloring yet, so I knew it wouldn't be as noticeable and I just started coloring. I wanted to keep things simple for the background so the stickers would stand out more, so I used a very dark blue for the sky, and when I was coloring the ground I realized the fire definitely needed to be a sticker too, because I made that middle mushroom fellow into a sticker and the fire was already on top of it, so it should look like another sticker on top for the scene to make sense. if that makes sense. It was an easy fix. I just left a little bit of space and then went around with the white marker, creating the same outline I had on the other shapes. Then I started to color the rest of the page, which were the stickers. I chose a very simple color palette for them, and at first I just filled everything with flat color. This part is always the most enjoyable. Once everything dried, I used the same markers I colored with to create shadows, and I created some hard shadows because I really wanted to try to make the stickers different from the background. When I was using the white marker to create the outlines on my now stickers, I had damaged some of the outlines of the illustrations, so I went ahead and fixed that with a black marker. And when I was outlining the fire sticker, I noticed that the outline I created for all of these was way too thick. That was my mistake. And this thick outline ruined the illusion of these being stickers a bit. So I went back over all of the stickers with the white marker to make this line thinner, super thin. And then I just polished the now thin, irregular black line with my thinnest liner pen. Finally, I used the markers to create a bit of shadows under the stickers, and I was about to call it done, but I wasn't sold on it. Something was off, it was looking flat, so I brought out my own stickers to see what I could improve, and I noticed stickers are usually shiny and these were looking flat. So using a white colored pencil, I added some rough highlights to all of the stickers, and that was it. I think that really made it look better. This was a fun effect to try, especially now that I made it once and I know what mistakes to avoid. I definitely think I would do this one again. Moving on, I'm trying this coloring technique I saw on Instagram. It was created by a page called Cute and Color. It was a little bit scary because it required me to paint the entire page black. And painting an entire page black worries me because in past occasions when I've used so much black, it has yellowed neighboring pages many days after coloring, many days after it was dry. I honestly think it was the Artex marker that was the worst, but I'm not certain. I think every black marker just bleeds a little in this very thin paper. Well, I didn't care because I wanted to try this effect, so I carried on anyhow. I started by coloring all of the individual illustrations with black, and that first step looked super cool. But just like Cute and Color did in hers, I started to paint all of the background with black as well. Do check her Instagram, which I'm going to link in the description because she has some pretty cool ideas on how to color. I think I definitely needed to be more patient with coloring the background because it was a little bit tedious and I may have rushed too much through it. It looks streaky. You can already tell it looks streaky. I should have colored much slower and in the tiny circles technique to allow the ink to flow evenly. I already know that is the only way to get an even result on areas this large, but yeah. Right then I thought maybe I could make it look better if I created an outline instead of extending the black all the way to the end of the page. So at least I did that. I finished coloring the entire page and of course it looked patchy. So I tried two different things to see which would even it out more while being the easiest on my wrist. In one area, I tried going over it with a colored pencil, and in another one, going over with the marker again, but with the tiny circles. And the marker worked better, and I think the difference was very noticeable. So yeah, it definitely needed that second layer. So yes, maybe don't do as I did and do as I say. Do the first layer properly and with patience using the tiny circle method. Okay, so now everything was black and ready. Time to bring in some acrylic markers for that high contrast effect. I chose the double-sided paint markers by Ohuhu because I love the thin nibs on these ones. And I thought they would be the best to go over the outlines with. I chose a color palette from Sarah Renee Clark's Color Cube for Inspo, and because I hadn't used the black swatch card that came with the markers, it was perfect for me to try the colors out and see the combinations that I liked best. Once I chose my colors, I started to go over the outlines of one of the leaves, and then instead of coloring it entirely, I drew more lines for texture. I added a lighter color on the center of the leaf to see how it looked, and I liked the effect, so I carried on with the rest of the drawing. After going over all of the leaves, I traced the pot, adding some details and pattern to it to make it more interesting too, and then I went for the cat. I made a squiggly line instead of tracing the outline as it were because I was trying to make the cat look fussy. And I apologize for this footage, I don't know what was going on with my camera, but I'll show you better with the next cat. I wanted to do the central illustration next, using different shades of pink to create the petals. And then I made the leaves on this flower brighter by using a light green and yellow. The cat was definitely the focus point of the entire page for me, so I made it bright yellow. And on this one you can see I traced it with a wiggly line too to make him appear fuzzy. I changed things up a bit on the next drawing. I tried to use this bluish color on the leaves instead of green, and I loved how it looked. So little by little I got braver with the color combination, and honestly it was very fun tracing everything with the bright colors and filling the spaces in with thin lines instead of coloring elements. When I was done, I thought the whole page needed to come together better, so I created a pink frame around the black. Then I thought I would try to make everything look glowier with colored pencils. I went around all of the elements on the page, coloring softly to create this light glow. I noticed the effect was better when I had a tiny black gap between the solid marker lines and the colored areas, so I went back in with a black color pencil to add that thin space. It's a nice effect, and overall I was happy with the look of the page and with testing the idea out. But as I'm editing, I think this idea worked fine without the colored pencil added to it. I'm definitely going to use my new book to explore this further, both with and without coloring pencils, because I think a lot of the illustrations there will look super cool with this type of effect. And just FYI, since I'm already talking about this book, it's my third and newest book and will be available on Amazon and my website on February 9th. But back to this page, I like the end result, especially when I see the original page next to it, but I definitely think I need more practice for this one, which is fine because it was fun, and like I said, I want to try it again. Moving on to the next page, I wanted to step out of my comfort zone and try something that's truly so different to my personal aesthetic in life and coloring, something fun, whimsical, and nostalgic. So I wanted to try the trend of coloring in Lisa Frank's style. I searched for reference images online, and the first thing that caught my eye was this rainbow leopard pattern. I thought it would be perfect for the heart in the background. I had to first color the entire heart with the rainbow gradients, so I chose my markers first and I started to color from red down. I have a tutorial on how to blend on this other video if you want to watch it, but basically what I do is keep my markers uncapped and go back and forth between the colors a lot until I get the desired result. I initially thought I had ruined this gradient by picking a pink, red, and orange that were too close together to each other to do the first part of the gradient, but I'm relieved to share with you that it all worked out in the end. So don't stress out like I did about having a perfect gradient. We'll add pattern on top anyhow and it will look okay. I chose my 7 colors, but I did have to add some mid-tones along the way. Like here between the yellow and the green, I had to bring in a very light lime green in the middle of the process for the blend to work. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your colors. You are going to need those mid shades. I painted one side of the heart first so I would have a better control of the inks, and then I did the other side. And as I went down the rainbow, the balance of colors looked better. Also keep in mind it looks better once it dries. I was done with the gradient, but the paper was super saturated with ink and it was wet, so it needed to dry a lot before adding anything on top. So in the meantime, I went ahead and started coloring other areas of the drawing, still looking at reference images of Lisa Frank's style for inspiration on how to choose colors. With her images as a guide, I chose a deep pink for the umbrella, which I paired with a light blue, a combo I would have never thought about. I used the same light blue on the bottom for balance. I knew I wanted the bear to be yellow, so I colored that and made the tiny penguin purple. How fun! With everything colored, I decided to create a frame around the illustration with a deep purple. I noticed she often uses dark purples to help other colors pop up, so I thought it fitting for the background, especially when I blended a little bit of pink towards the center. Okay, so now I had no blank spaces left and the background was dry, so it was time to add the leopard spots. And these are basically all just irregular C shapes, as in drawing the letter C. That I drew with the black alcohol marker on top. You can really have a little bit of fun with this, playing with the shape. The colorful spots in the middle get added later, but I couldn't wait to try the marker combo, so I drew a couple of dots with the pink acrylic marker to try it out. It worked great, so I carried on drawing C shapes on top of the heart. Once it was full, I grabbed more acrylic markers and painted different color centers all over. The rainbow leopard print was ready, now to make the rest of the drawing as rich. First, I added pattern to the umbrella with the same color I used to color it, and I made this waffle cone texture more evident by adding shadows with the darker color. Then I drew a tiny zebra pattern on the bear's bow, created shadows on everything, and then using acrylic markers again, I started to add some little star-shaped sprinkles to the top of the umbrella, while also covering some of the outlines to soften them. I changed the outline of the heart to pink too, and for the bear as well, because I saw very little solid black lines on Lisa's illustrations. I drew a few more stars with different colored markers and little hearts on the puddles, then added highlights with acrylics and outlined the purple square with black just to tie it all together. And that's it. Here's how this page looked before and how it looks after, inspired by Lisa Frank's style. I'm actually very obsessed with this one. I tried colors and patterns I would have never on my own, and the result is so cool. It may be my favorite page of the day. But before deciding and looking back at everything, let me show you how I transformed the page of my regular book into a Christmas scene. So after drawing a Santa hat on the mouse, I jumped into coloring the flower with red. I wanted to keep this page mostly to greens and reds, so I wanted to test some of my colors first. Then using the pencil again, I started to draw diagonal lines inside the teapot because I wanted to create a beautiful patterned wallpaper inside. The first lines I drew were a little off and did not result in a diamond pattern, so I had to erase them. Tried again, drawing them at a 45-degree angle, and that worked. So with the pattern drawn, it was time to color. I used green first, coloring only one side of these diagonal lines, and then I colored every other diamond in between the stripes with red. As that dried, I went back to the flower to add some shadows both to the petals and the stems. Then it was back to my diagonals, and now that the first layer was dried, I painted the other side going on top of the stripes I already had, so that when they dried, I would have this layered effect, making the diamond-shaped intersections darker. Now I thought the difference wasn't noticeable enough, so I did go back with the third layer of coloring and made those intersections darker. Then using a white gel pen, I drew some dotted lines going across, trying to create this Christmassy gingham pattern. I think I probably should have stopped at that, but I wanted to add a little bit more to my pattern, so I grabbed the chisel side of my red marker, and then I drew more diagonal lines going over everything. This background was finally done, so it was time to color the rest of the elements. I chose to color the ground inside green like if it were a rug, and then just played with different shades of red and green for everything else. I created a striped pattern on the flower pot, and started to layer colors on the butterflies since I wanted it to have a bit of a glitter effect. Again, I explained in detail how to color glitter in that video I mentioned before if you want to check it out. The rug needed texture, so I started to draw some little dots on it with the colorless blender, which actually picks up color and makes areas lighter. I would add more texture when that dried. So first I colored the entire teapot with a solid color so that I could create another pattern on top of that. I jumped around the page as things dried, so it was finally time to color the mouse. It's gray for him, and I kept going back and forth adding shadows to the areas of the drawing that were already dry. I started to draw the darker circles on the rug now, and then white ones with gel pen to make it super textured. And I also used the pen to add a few highlights inside. It was time to start layering the acrylic markers for the hat too, because I had to cover a lot of stuff underneath, and I knew these was gonna need more than one layer of paint again. So while that dried, I started the pattern on the teapot. I chose to paint some little holly leaves and berries on it, and I complemented that marker pattern with white gel dots. I still had the ground and the background to color, and I decided I would go for a night snowy scene. So first I created an outline around the sky area, and I colored everything with a dark grayish blue. Then used the light gray for the now snowy ground, which I added depth to with little spots colored with a darker gray. Then I worked a little bit more on the glitter effect for the butterfly using acrylic markers to break the solid outline. And again, I have a detailed tutorial on that previous video. And all I had left was to create a snowy sky. For this, I again used a color blender to draw dots that made the blue sky lighter. And then using an acrylic marker and a Q-tip, I added more soft round circles to everything by gently tapping the marker, creating an acrylic dot that then I smudged with the cotton swab. And here it is, a Christmas theme page in a coloring book that has nothing to do with Christmas, just to show you what the possibilities are. And now back to flipping through all the pages we colored today, trying different viral techniques. I am really happy I took the time to try all of these since I'm very happy with the results. But please never forget, coloring does not have to be this complicated. It just needs to be a moment of calm and joy for you in whatever style or level you enjoy the most. That's it. It's supposed to be fun. Let me know which of these was your favorite page and if there are any other coloring techniques you think I should try. Now it's the perfect time because my new coloring book will be available on February 9th, like I said, shameless plug, and I can't wait to start coloring it. With that, I hope you're having the most wonderful day and that I'll see you next time. Bye!